When we think of just psychedelics being mainstream today, whether a high therapeutic ceremonial dose or a microdose, it's because of the research and the data and all the clinical trials and everything. But the progress that we've been able to make because of all the research from these fantastic, credible institutions, now the world is waking up to really having a better idea of these being therapeutic medicines versus drugs. We've come a long way of destigmatizing and creating a lot more respect through the research because the research tells a story. And when you start to have Stanford and John Hopkins and Imperial, College of London coming out with these studies, people start to really listen and start to wake up. And then you hear of people having incredible benefits and sharing that with people that are close to them and the impact, and it just creates this beautiful ripple effect. And so that's really supported why we're here, why we're even having this conversation today, how it's even possible, and all those things.
Welcome to Linda's Corner, where we bring more hope, healing, and happiness to the world. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about the transformative power of microdosing psychedelic mushrooms. I'm delighted to welcome Tiffany Hurd. Tiffany is a microdose advisor for Golden Rule mushrooms. Their innovative approach to overcome anxiety, depression, PTSD, and other challenges have been featured on NBC, ABC, Fox, Business Insider, and Yahoo Finance. You can learn more about Tiffany at their website, Golden Rule Mushrooms, and on social media, and I'll include those links in the show notes. Welcome, Tiffany. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Thank you so much, Linda. Yeah, we're so excited to be here. Really appreciate you having us.
Thank you. Now, for most of my life, and probably for many people who are listening, when you hear the word psychedelics or mushrooms or anything like that, my brain goes to hippies and tie-dye and all just some strange kind of behavior. And until I saw a documentary called Fantastic Fungi, that was the image that was in my mind. But since becoming a little bit more aware of the positive effects when these things are used properly, it can make a huge difference in some types of problems that we have a kind of a hard time cracking the case on otherwise. So can you kind of just give us some background about why are mushrooms okay? Why is it okay that we're even talking about this in public, not, like hidden in a closet?
Yeah. And maybe depending on your audience, I can also share like what microdosing is so that they have a better understanding of that too. Yeah, absolutely. When we think of just psychedelics being mainstream today, whether a high therapeutic ceremonial dose or a microdose, it's because of the research and the data and all the clinical trials and everything that has been ongoing, is still very much so ongoing. And there's so much that's to come. But we think of the war on drugs in the 50s, and psychedelics were considered a controlled substance and were considered illegal, and they still are, aside from a few, and then in a few states. But the progress that we've been able to make because of all the research from these fantastic, credible institutions, now the world is waking up to really having a better idea of these being therapeutic medicines versus drugs and hippy approaches. And we've come a long way of destigmatizing and creating a lot more respect through the research because the research tells a story. And when you start to have Stanford and John Hopkins and Imperial, College of London coming out with these studies, people start to really listen and start to wake up. And then you hear of people having incredible benefits and sharing that with people that are close to them and the impact, and it just creates this beautiful ripple effect. And so that's really supported why we're here, why we're even having this conversation today, how it's even possible, and all those things. I think I'll segue into what microdosing is to give your audience a better understanding of what on earth we're talking about right now, because that's always really helpful. And we can always go into the benefits and the science, and wherever you would like to go, I'm happy to go there with you. But when we think of microdosing, what's amazing with microdosing is you can drive a car, you can be on work meetings, you can go about your everyday life feeling completely normal because you're microdosing 1/10 to 1/20th of what is considered a therapeutic dose. Now, when I say microdosing is a medicine, it's a substance, it's a psychedelic plant medicine. The most common ones that people are microdosing with are psilocybin mushrooms and LSD. Now, I know when we hear LSD, we probably really start to think of trippy hippies and everything. I can see it all over Linda's face. But because we're microdosing at such a sub-perceptual, non-intoxicating, non-hallucinogenic level, we're not tripping, we're not hallucinating, we're not turning into hippies. We're in fact using these medicines for therapeutic benefits, outcomes, healing, transformation, things along those lines, where when we think of microdosing, it's a practice that we hone and we refine, and it's not a one-time, one-day experience, but it's intended to be something that you're doing about 3 to 4 times a week over 30, 60, 90 days to really receive the consistency of the benefits. And people are experiencing, alleviating anxiety, depression, getting off their SSRI pharmaceutical medications, accessing creativity, joy, self-love. I mean, there's so many benefits that are out there today.
Wow, that is huge. And thank you for clarifying and being able to explain what microdosing is, because it matters. We can't talk about something if people have no idea what we're talking about. Okay, so very, very small doses
Yeah.
of this therapeutic medicine. We're not using it as a recreational drug. We're not trying to have hallucinations. We're not tripping out. What we're searching for is a way to be able to really feel peace, to be able to love ourselves, to be able to get over the anxiety, the depression, the whatever issues we happen to be dealing with. And I kind of like that this is something that's small, that we're using for a period of time. I think most healing is not like going from darkness to light, like you flip on a light switch. Occasionally that happens, but usually it's more like a sunrise
Mhm.
where the light kind of comes a little bit at a time, almost imperceptible maybe, but when you turn around, it's like, wow, it's light. It used to be dark. And authentic healing often goes that way. And
Mhm.
so I love that this it goes in harmony with what feels right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what's wonderful about it is you get to go at your own calibrated pace in a way that feels good for you. This is intended to help improve your day and your energy and your emotions versus take you out of that experience. And so much of microdosing is learning how to work with the medicine, learning how to find the dosing range that feels really good for you, learning what days throughout the week are going to be most supportive for you, incorporating practices to regulate your nervous system and go deeper into maybe some processing where there's something that needs to be processed and released so that you can feel more free and more alive and more joyful. So it's not something where I'm going to just take this capsule or take this pill and all of a sudden there's magic and it's going to change my life. It requires you to also participate in the experience and contribute and do the work because it's a tool. It shows you and reveals and opens and brings things up for you to have the awareness around, and then you get to choose, how do I want to be with this? And as you touched on, Linda, it's not one of those situations where, or let me rewind, is for you to participate in that experience, that's where you build your confidence and trust within yourself and freedom of authenticity. If something was just handed to you, it's not going to feel as great in the long term because you didn't do it.
Wow, you brought up such important things. And it is true, but it's also disappointing because sometimes the truth is, well, always we have to buy in. No one can fix us. We have to be part of the process. We really require tools to be able to heal ourselves. And if this is something that makes it so that I can deal with things that before maybe I was trying to avoid, and sometimes people go to addictions to be able to try to avoid or to cope with things, and this is a safer alternative, but we still have to buy in. We still have to do some work. Dang it. It would be so nice if you could just take a pill, do a something, and then magically you're all better. But it doesn't work that way.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't. No. And I think that's where the fulfillment lives is knowing that you chose to move forward in something that was going to impact and change your life in a positive way. and you leaned into it knowing it had its challenges. You leaned into it knowing that it wasn't going to be an easy road, and you stuck it through, you saw it through, you put in the work, and now all of a sudden your life is beautiful because of what you chose to change about yourself and how that impacts you, the way that you show up and love yourself. If you have children, how you show up with your family, your spouse, and your work. Everything starts with the foundation of you, and then everything just exudes from that space. So it's a beautiful journey if you allow it to be. Allow.
That was amazing. The line that you said, what we choose to change. That
Mhm.
is so huge. So many of us in our life, we want things to change, but I
Yeah.
don't want to change. I
Yeah.
want the things to change.
Hmm.
But in order for our life to change, we have to choose to change. So if
Hmm.
there's something that's going to help me be able to, because I'm putting in the work. I mean, let's say I'm somebody who is willing to put in the work, but it feels like nothing I've been doing is giving me the results that I'm after. So let's talk to somebody who's in that situation. It's like, you know what? I've been doing everything that I know how to do. How is this going to help put me into a pathway to success rather than these roadblocks I keep bumping into?
Such a great question, Linda. And I think this is a great segue to kind of speak into the science of working with microdosing, because it also paints a story of how this is possible and how it's not placebo and how it's actually changing your biological system. And so, which allows you to have these new perspectives. So when we microdose or even work with a higher dose, just psychedelics, plant medicines in general, it's increasing our brain's neuroplasticity. And when we increase our brain's neuroplasticity, all of a sudden we start to rewire new thought patterns. It creates communication between the left and the right hemisphere of the brain. So if we think of a sort of stuck emotion, or sort of what you said, like, hey, I keep running into these same patterns, or I'm doing the work, I'm looking to make the changes, but there's just something that's not changing. I feel like I'm kind of in this thought loop pattern around a certain experience or a certain way of thinking or viewing myself or a situation. Think of that as a pathway, a neural pathway in your brain that you're just kind of on a hamster wheel, kind of spinning. It keeps on showing up in your life. You can't figure out why. And all of a sudden, when we start to work with these medicines, there's a variety of those pathways that are opening up and being created within the brain. Now, all of a sudden, that one stuck pathway has options to go down versus just that same one. That's where people start to really free themselves, because all of a sudden they have these new perspectives and these new outlooks on life that are not stuck in the same experience. And so that's happening even with these 1/10 to 1/20th amounts of medicine, which is phenomenal. Um, it's also, like I said, creating communication within the brain. So if one side of the brain is stuck in a certain experience and there's not the communication, all of a sudden it's just kind of bumping up against the way that you're viewing things. So all that to say, when the neuroplasticity is increased, our brains become more plastic, they become more malleable. And what this means is it allows us to form these new pathways that create more openness and a receptiveness to change and to create these new behaviors and break these old habits. We become a lot more open and adaptable to making the changes that we desire.
That was beautiful. So, an image that I can see kind of in my mind is I am driving a car and I'm on one of those tracks where it just goes in a loop around and around and around. And that's the only place I can go. So no matter what it is that wherever I want to get to, I'm not going to get there because I'm stuck on this loop going around and around and around. There's no off ramp. There's no exit. This is the only choice that I have, is to continue to go forward, or I can stop or go backwards, but I'm stuck on this path. But as our brains create new pathways, it's almost like it's creating an off ramp or an
Mm-hmm.
exit, so that if I want to go over there, then I can exit and then I can head in that direction, a new direction, rather than being stuck in going in my circle around and around. And that is freeing. And it also, I hope, gives people who are listening some self-compassion that there are some reasons why we stay stuck in patterns. There isn't within our brain that exit, um, that way to get out. And so if you felt frustrated and stuck, it's not because you don't have willpower enough. It's not because you're a loser. It's not because you're a failure. It's because we need some new pathways. So
Hmm.
I think that's important to recognize too, because it can be really frustrating when you feel stuck.
Absolutely. And thank you for that reflection. It was beautifully shared. And, whether you feel unworthy or you don't feel good enough or you feel this isn't for you or you've tried everything and there's a lot of frustration, what I love about working with these medicines is that it allows us to start to get to the core root of where that was established from. At some point in your life, you went through an experience or something deeply impacted you to the point where you started to believe these things about yourself. And if we can start to go into where that was, where its origin resides, and we don't always have to re traumatize or go relive it, but we take the us today and connect with the version of you then, childhood typically, and you nurture it, her, him. You establish a new pathway around the belief of how that was viewed. You create safety. You create a whole new story around how that has been impacting you. And that's one of the biggest benefits that we see with these medicines.
I love that. In
Yeah.
order to heal real, authentic healing, we always have to get to the root. There's not a shortcut um, or really another path if we don't get to the root. It's going to come back. But isn't it wonderful when there are tools and ways to help us to be able to get there? I love that you said we don't have to relive it
Hmm. Hmm.
because sometimes that can be so terrifying. It's like, I'm not going there.
Oh yeah, resistance, avoidance, unawareness of, I mean, so many things can find themselves in the room of as to why we do not want to go there. Yeah. And a lot of it is some serious trauma where it is unsafe to go back into that space, even mentally. So, um, yeah, yeah, there's a lot we can go into with that.
Oh, absolutely. Do you want to share any of your story? How has this helped you in your transformation, in your journey?
Yeah, beautiful. So, I grew up in a pretty unstable household, single mother home, drugs in and out of jail were used within the family dynamic. I myself started using around 12 years old, not from an addictive state, but from a this is normal, this is in my home, this is what I know kind of state. One thing led to another where mother was in and out of jail very often. We were living with family friends. Was taken out of school one day, asked to get into childcare. My uncle ended up taking us in and kind of started my life at that point. Started playing basketball, was very good. That was my outlet. Got a Division I scholarship basketball at a Providence College. Did that for quite some time. Moved to Chicago. Started my career in the medical industry, which was very unplanned. But I worked my way up to success and climbed the ladder. And you take a background that I had, a very type A, driven, competitive, and it worked really well with executive sales roles in the medical industry. And so I did that for about 15 years. And, all of the childhood trauma started to catch up to me because I hadn't really done any work. And I started to dive into therapy and personal development, and that was incredible and healing and amazing in so many ways. I also was on pharmaceutical medications, Adderall and Lexapro, for about 6 years, mainly because of the unresolved trauma, but also being in a career that was unfulfilling in a lot of ways and confusing to me in a lot of ways. And you just kind of combine those, and it would just poke and poke and poke because that's what the patterns and the beliefs and the unresolved experiences tend to do. And so that happened to show in relationships for me, of course, because those are very intimate and vulnerable. And then in a career where I was great at what I was doing, but not very fulfilled. And so I started to hear about psychedelics. And again, this was about 8 years ago where nothing was mainstream. There was not any research, barely any, but enough for me to put myself on a protocol, kind of create my own experience with microdosing. And I wanted to get off the medication. And so within 3 months, I did. And it was because of microdosing, hands down, but also my choice to make the changes and decide that this was something that I wanted to change within my life and committed to the process and made the, did the lifestyle changes and everything that comes with making serious changes like that. So, as you can imagine, 6 years of medication, those are now removed. I'm working with this incredible medicine. It's just opening up my heart and my truth and my aliveness in these beautiful ways. And it's also bringing up so many things just alone with the medicine emotionally, but also the suppressed trauma from the medication that I wasn't feeling all those years. So it was this like dual effect. So it required me to pay attention and to really go into everything we're talking about, the root of where these came from, establish new experiences around them, and really just do the work. And I was like, you know what? This is something that has changed my life so much that I think I need to make a career out of this. And I fought it for a long time because look, most people want to leave the corporate world, but when you look at your finances and the six-figure salary and the car that they give you for most companies, the corporate card, the setup that is shared with you, and then I come from, a homeless background. We were living in and out of shelters, and the stability of finances was a little shaky for me. So that was a very scary transition for me to make. So I started to work with clients 3 to 4 a month where I would start teaching them how to work with microdosing. And I kept the corporate job and I did this for many years. And then I finally felt comfortable enough to make the leap, went into my work full time, went back and forth a couple more times. But I started to teach people how to work with these medicines. I started to facilitate these medicines with the higher therapeutic experience. And then a couple years in, I was like, you know what? I really miss the business background. How can I merge all these worlds together? And so that is what I do now as of about 4 years ago, where I took the business strategy sales background, took the psychedelic background, merged the worlds, where that led me to Golden Rule, where I'm now doing microdosing advising and a ton of education for our community, and then supporting with our partnerships and the business side of things as well. So it's been an incredible journey.
That was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Man, there's so many things to talk about, just kind of
I know.
springboard from that. I am so proud of you for
Mm,
becoming who you are and what you are with the background and your starting, because it could so easily have gone another direction.
thank
So
you.
I am so proud of you. What you did for yourself before you ever discovered this particular tool, you knew that you were worth saving, that you were worth contributing, that there was something about Tiffany that was worth whatever it took to become the best person you could be. I can see it, I can feel it. And in your story, it's just wow. You are amazing. I am so proud of you. And working with what we have and doing the very best that we can do
Mhm.
and using some medications to be able to help you to function and to succeed. And they're wonderful, but they're a little different. You
Mhm.
mentioned that there were a couple drawbacks, and one is it prevented you from feeling and being able to process some of these things that were the real root of the problem.
Mhm.
And for many people, that's actually the coping mechanism that they're hoping for is I don't want to deal with this.
Yeah.
And that's fine for them. That's absolutely fine.
Mhm.
But when you're ready to heal, it takes a different approach. And that is the journey that you have taken. And with so much success
Mhm.
and moving forward and really entering a whole new world in every aspect of your life, including your financial stability. And then to say, dang it, the stuff that I went through did not disappear because I am in a new place and time has passed. And that I think is a kind of a stumbling block where a lot of people go. We don't want to look back. We want to only look forward. And not everyone understands that a little bit of looking back and cleaning up can help us really move forward. So,
Mhm.
very well done. If it's okay, I would like a little bit of clarification on how microdosing is different when you say getting off medication. Are we trading one medication for another? Or are we saying, you know what, I don't require this anymore. And now I'm to a point where I actually don't require anything. But if I want to keep moving, this is okay. Can you help me understand that a little bit?
Of course. And thank you for acknowledging and sharing. I feel really seen and touched by that, by your share. So thank you. And so and it's kind of a disclaimer, right? It's no one is sharing, hey, replace microdosing with SSRI pharmaceutical medication or SNRIs. It's a very individualized, sensitive, vulnerable process. And so, what we find, and I'll speak through my experience and then people I've supported, and what we just see in general is there's certain medications that are contraindications to microdosing with. So there's a list of those online that we can share in the show notes so that you can just kind of be aware of that. But for the most part, you can microdose with psilocybin mushrooms and your medication. And so usually we start with continuing to take your daily medication. You don't want to automatically just pull those out and release those because of the brain chemistry and the years. It would be very unsupportive in a lot of ways to just stop one day. So it's a process of a time consuming gradual process. And I always had the doctor involved who was the prescribing physician, which is highly recommended because they're going to support with tapering off slowly. And you want them to be a part of that process because they're prescribing the medication, and that's really important. And so what I did personally was I would microdose, in the morning, and then I would take my medication a couple hours later. So I would space them out a little bit. That's usually what people do anyway. And then I was microdosing for a couple weeks, everything stayed the same with my medication because I wanted to see how was my body going to respond to putting in the medicine of the mushrooms while still being on my medication. Does this feel good? Am I having any reactions or responses? Everything felt great. So I continued. And then within about a couple weeks, about 5 milligrams were pulled back in the agreements with my physician. Maintained microdosing, slowly started pulling out the medication. Great. Doing that for about 2 to 3 weeks. How does this feel? How am I responding? If it's great, okay, great. We can continue, and then we can slowly continue to pull back. And so I was able to do that within 3 months. I've supported a lot of people who have done it within 3 months, but that's a very quick turnaround time, especially if you're on medications for 5, 10, 15 years. Also depends what medication, also depends the milligram amount that you're on. So there's a lot to take into consideration. But to directly answer the question, yes, you, for the most part, can do both at the same time and then slowly start to taper off the medication over time. And so one more thing I would add to that is because of everything that I shared with the brain, like the neuroplasticity and the regions of the brain, we also can add that psilocybin, and I would say LSD too, are producing more serotonin levels in the brain. So depending on the medication that you're on, that's where a lot of us are not having side effects or withdrawal symptoms because most medications are providing an increase of serotonin or dopamine depending on which you're on. And so as you start to remove that, you're just basically replacing it with one that's positive but holistic, which is pretty fascinating. And there's a lot of research on the value and the benefits of that.
Thank you. And is that microdosing something that you need to continue, or is that something also that you can taper off?
Yeah, so it's not addictive. It's not something that you become dependent or reliant on. What we find is think of it like breath work or meditation, where you have this incredible tool and resource that adds value and benefits to your life when you want to utilize it and work with it in certain ways. Microdosing is really similar to that, where you want to have the consistency of, like I said, microdosing 3 to 4 times a week, 30 days minimum, 90 days maximum, and then take about a week or two break to reset the system, calibrate the body, not build the tolerance, which is, those are the main side effects, quote unquote, of microdosing. But it's something that you can cultivate on and off for as long as you desire. Yeah.
This has been so delightful. And Tiffany, I'm going to circle back when we first started talking, and we're talking about these mushrooms, this psychedelics, where the voices that I first heard about this from were not, I would say, reputable.
Mhm.
And now, as we're having voices that are reputable and
Mhm.
having a different source of the story, it feels better. And as
Mm.
I'm listening to you, the source feels good. I love that you're working in harmony with your doctor. You're working in harmony with common sense. You're working in harmony with authentic healing and going to the root and doing the work and taking care of things. And everything that you said just feels in harmony with truth. And I
Mm.
appreciate that. So thank you so much for visiting with me today. Is there anything else you want to make sure that we cover before we close?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. And yeah, if anyone here is listening and is interested in learning more about who we are, what we're doing, how to find us, goldenrulemushrooms.com is our website. We love to work with all walks of life. If you're new to microdosing, if you have experience, it's a fit for all of you. And the approach that we love to take is you'll go to our website. There's a quiz that you can take that will give you clarity and insight on maybe what products you can take or what's best for you, what days to microdose. All of that's on the website, along with the products that you can select from. And then a lot of the work that we do as well is we have a ton of community support and education, like I was touching on in the beginning, because yes, we have this incredible or these incredible products, but you get to learn how to work with the products to really receive the fullness of the experience. And so a lot of that is through community educational calls. We have a microdosing program that we start in May where I guide it and I facilitate a whole journey for you to go on and learn how to microdose with a community, which is really beautiful in a lot of ways. But if you have any questions about any of this, we'll have our email in the show notes, and I'm in there all the time answering community questions, and I absolutely love to hear from you. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you do.
Thank you. That is so helpful because if this is a brand new journey, isn't it nice to have somebody who knows what they're doing as a guide? That makes all the difference for success. So, Tiffany, thank you. This has been delightful.
Thank you so much, Linda. Really appreciate you.
In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Albert Hoffman. He said, "Mushrooms have a way of helping us see what really matters in life and letting go of the things that don't." Today, I invite our listeners to find a way that works for them, to find out what really matters in life, and to let go of the things that don't. See you next time on Linda's Corner. Thanks for tuning in to Linda's Corner podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends to help us inspire even more listeners. Be sure to visit hopeforhealingfoundation.org for free and affordable resources to help you overcome life's challenges. And explore healingbreathworkdetox.com, where you'll find transformative tools for deep inner healing and lasting change. Also, don't forget to check out my books, Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, and You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. Your journey to hope, healing, and happiness starts here.